Hey YouTubers, it's Michael back with The Chosen and Beyond, and today we'll be focusing on Season 2, Episode 3, Matthew 4:24. So Jesus and the disciples are camping in the wilderness, and they're all in Syria, and his news is spreading about Jesus, and he's becoming more famous. All the sick and those in pain are traveling to meet him for healing. So there's a long line. It starts with Jesus out, and they're camping, the disciples are camping, and there's a long line of people to get healed waiting to see Jesus. And so as this is happening, this episode, even though it is about that healing, it's about what's going on in the background with the disciples. What are they talking about? And what is discussion? What are the good things they're talking about? What are some of the things that they're discussing that they're concerned about? They're allowing their fears and their worries to take over. So let's dive in now to Chosen Episode 3, Matthew 4:24. Let's get into it. So for this scene here, we have the beginning of the episode. They're in Syria. They're camping out in the wilderness, and all these people have come all over because of Jesus' fame. Right now, they know that he's healed people and he's done miracles, and so they're following him for him to be healed. So there's a very long line here. We can see this woman here, and we can also start to see the weariness of people. You can see that the disciples are getting tired, but Jesus is going to heal everybody, right? He's not leaving until everyone's healed. So we zoom in here a little bit, and we see Philip and Matthew talking, and Matthew saying to Philip, I really want to learn more about Scripture. Everybody knows a lot. Can you give me a passage? And he's asking him I think he asked him for some advanced stuff, and so Philip's kind of like, just take this. If you ascend into heaven, I am there. If you make your bed in the depths, I am there. So that's from Psalms 139:8. It's a beautiful reminder that God's with us everywhere, right? No matter where we are, God's with us. And so that's something he's going to share, and we'll see here. So Matthew, in his great portrayal of this role, which is a little bit of an autistic flair to Matthew's role, but basically he's saying, I'm not planning on going to heaven or making my bed in the depths. So what I love about this is that Philip says, no amount of learning can bring you closer to God, right? He's always with you. And you may not feel his presence, but as your belief grows, so will what you feel and what you observe. So I think that's really interesting. And I think this is also maybe a tie into Hebrews 11, where it says, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. So this next scene, we can see Matthew walks over to Mary and Rama and shows this is a transition, obviously, from his role of tax collector to now being a student, which is really phenomenal. And Mary and Rama also want to learn more. So he's saying, this is the scripture that was just given to me by Philip. Let's read and learn more and discuss this. In the meanwhile, we have Thomas, and everyone's just talking about, I didn't know we were going to go to Syria, and I definitely didn't think we were going to camp out here. So what are we a part of? What is this group? Thomas is saying, I don't know. What are we a part of here? And we know Thomas is always very careful, and he has a lot of questions. He's concerned. And the group is wondering, why isn't the fighting begun? So you can see just Jim, this next scene here, we've got James on the left, and you can see Mary and Rama. And he's saying, when's the fighting going to begin? I'm ready. I trained as a soldier when I was a kid. I read all the things I was supposed to read. And, where's the military leader component of Messiah going to come in? Because I'm ready for that. And so this is really interesting. It prompts a big discussion with the group. As Mary, I think, mentions, why are you expecting a military warrior? Why are we expecting a battle here? And so Thomas jumps in, which is interesting. You see him on the right there. He quotes Zechariah 14. He says here, for I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city will be captured, and the Lord will go forth and fight against those nations. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives. So I'm just paraphrasing, but he's saying, we can see in scripture here, there should be some kind of battle. But Mary kind of jumps in and she says, why are you expecting a military leader? Thomas jumps in with this military passage. And then I think John actually jumps in and says, isn't it supposed to be a time when all things are holy? And Big James is saying, there was a poem that was written that says, there will be no unrighteousness in them on his day, for they all shall be holy, and the King will be their Lord Messiah. So Big James says that, and Mary kind of jumps in and says, I don't know about that, because I couldn't even pray until Jesus was here to help me, because I needed him to be holy. and everyone has their sins, no matter who they are. And so she's saying, I think we need him to be holy. And everyone agrees that's pretty powerful. And Philip makes a comment about sharing that with the baptizer. So I thought that was really powerful. In the next scene here, we have Thomas and little James, and they're having a really beautiful conversation, and they're playing some kind of ancient version of chess or checkers here. And basically Thomas asks him, he says, hey, I know that you have a malady. What is your injury? And he's saying, I wanted to ask Jesus to heal me, but I'm just not sure if it's right. I'm not sure if I should ask Jesus right now. The timing isn't right. And so he's just kind of struggling with his decisions on what he should ask for, what he should not ask for. Now, I think this is actually really beautiful because later in the series, when we get to the 2x2, where Jesus sends the disciples on 2x2, there's a really powerful discussion with Jesus, specifically about his injury. And so I'll save that for another review later. But this is a really beautiful scene there. And so this kind of moves a little bit forward. Simon is there. They've all kind of had their dinner and they're relaxing. And Simon says to Andrew, hey, I need a mental break. Can you say one of your meaningless question games? So they're just funny. They're playing the what if game. And Andrew says, what would you do to have unlimited money? And so they all talk about what they would do, for what they'd be willing to give up. But this kind of rolls into a conversation about their faith. And it gets a little bit intense because they talk about some of the different reasons about their faith. And it's a little bit tense because there's a discussion about Matthew's past, and they're asking him, does he feel guilty for having a lot of money? And he's saying, I feel different. I don't think it made me feel guilty. And so then in this next scene, we have Mary Magdalene, the mother Mary, and they're discussing what it was like for Jesus to come into her life. And Mary Magdalene asks Mother Mary, when did you know who Jesus really was? And Mary describes the circumstances of Jesus' birth. She was really far from home. Her mother was not there. She was just a teenage girl from Nazareth. So the humility here is really amazing. And she's just saying, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I can't really describe it. I'll tell you more later. She describes Jesus being really cold, and he needed her. And she was wondering, wow, is this tiny child that's shaking and cold really the Son of God? And that her and Joseph had that discussion. And we always are burdened with belief and unbelief, right? This is something that constantly doubt is always going to be there with us. And we have to constantly fight that off, right? That's something we have to, with the battle. It's part of our battle spiritually and with our battle on earth, right? So in the next scene, as they're talking about this, they're talking about doubt, and it's going around the group, and the discussion gets a bit deeper, and they're talking about their journeys and how they strayed from the law and how the Roman occupation really hurt them. And Thomas, he says something, and he's, I don't understand, why is the Messiah allowing the occupation to happen? And Mary Magdalene sees this, and you can see she's very shaken and she's angry here. And because this is foreshadowing that she was directly harmed. Mary Magdalene was harmed by the Roman soldiers in the betrayal, in the chosen. And so this is foreshadowing kind of her emotional arc later in the season, where she's going to see Roman soldiers and be really hurt by their presence, right? She agrees, right? She would like the occupation to be gone as well. So as we move forward here in this next scene, there's a confrontation, as they've all discussed how they went away from the law and did different things they shouldn't have done. And Simon says, Matthew, you are the biggest troublemaker. I understand that Mary Magdalene had her issues, and I understand that everyone else had their problems, but you chose a career to make money. What's your excuse for working with the Romans? It escalates. John steps in and says to Simon, who are you to forgive and not to forgive? This is a very critical line, right? It's a very close tie-in to Matthew 6, right? Only the Father is the one that should be doing the forgiveness right here, right? So this is a very big, very emotional scene here, where as Jesus is doing healing, you've got all this kind of trouble arguing going on with the disciples, and they're not sure how to agree or disagree. And Mother Mary and little James had gone off for kind of a quick walk, I think, to check on Jesus and see what was going on. And they're coming back, and they see everyone's getting worked up. The disciples are arguing, and it's a painful moment, but it's an honest moment. The early church was not without its flaws. And it's just a representation of the battle that we all have to overcome our emotional earthly ties and embrace a spiritual journey of forgiveness and putting all the trust in God. It's really hard for everyone to do that because they all have their issues. So at that moment, Jesus walks in. He walks back from healing everybody. Jesus is very weary. You can see here, he just kind of holds out his hand. He says good night. He's just been spending the whole day healing, and it's a very powerful moment. Everyone sees what he's been doing, and they're sad. They're like, man, Jesus was out there healing, and here we are arguing over who said what and who's in charge of this. So it's really powerful, a really powerful scene. We move forward, and Mary rushes to Jesus' aid. She's thinking this is a very beautiful tie-in to where she mentioned earlier where Jesus needed her when he was cold and a child after he was born. And so she starts to comfort him, and it's just a beautiful tie-in to the conversation that Mother Mary had with Mary Magdalene, where she spoke of holding Jesus as an infant. And so as this winds up here, the final scene, we see Jesus laying down and he's resting. We've witnessed the disciples' disagreements, the emotional weight of their wounds, of past wounds. And just Jesus is what does he do in his moment of difficulty? He turns to God the Father and he starts to pray, and he says, "Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, and may it be your will, Lord, that I lie down in peace and that I arise in peace." And I'm paraphrasing, it was not the whole thing, but this is very similar to a traditional Jewish, I think, bedtime prayer called the Shema, but also this is very similar of Psalms 4. In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, will make me dwell in safety. So it's really beautiful. There's I feel like a lot of Psalms, there's the Psalms for everything, I feel like, somewhere in here, but it's just not just only a moment of Jesus needing physical rest, but it's a spiritual pause, a reminder that even the Son of Man turned to the Father at night with the same faith. We should do exactly what he would do, right? So it's just very intimate, beautiful scene here as he rests, and that's the end of the episode. This is actually one of the shorter episodes. I think it's around 30 minutes. It's very reflective of season 1, Jesus with the little children episode. That was also really short, really emotional, and they spent a lot of time in the wilderness. I've noticed episode 3 of each season seems to be a little bit different and just more contemplative, right? There's a lot more thinking and more dialogue than action in those episodes. So wraps up the review today for season 2, episode 3, Matthew 4:24 of The Chosen. Please watch The Chosen at thechosen.tv. The links will be in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.